Well, but see, we told them last time, in addition to the tape, we talked a little after we turned the tape off, and we said you all could relate this verbally.
I understand, but according to what was told to us in the brief, somebody went to two individuals who were at retreat, and they were what was discussed at the retreat center. I'm not sure what he asked, but it appeared that he had gone and asked them. Okay, see, we don't have procedures for doing that. Did y'all know that? Or have we set down the procedure where y'all can discuss this?
Well, the only time you're on the that I recall is that when you're in the meeting and the individuals were saying something, you could ask for clarification. That was one or two things.
How would they know anymore?
And what
It's
they
not
could
so
say.
I mean, like if they worded something in a way that somebody
You mean somebody who was talking, but not.
Yes. You're not asking about the tape. You're asking only about if we've given additional instruction for the ones returning from retreat to discuss something verbally that was not on the tape. And let's say that those are discussing it, and someone asks for a question for clarification of that. But they can't then let that open the door to asking, well, does that imply so-and-so, does that imply so-and-so? That happens in your head, not by asking others. And if you then have a question that's unanswered, what's the procedure to do this? It's to write the question and send it to retreat, and it'll get answered. But you don't discuss it. We couldn't understand how the questions that just came to retreat were written after the last meeting tape and the last one's talk, because the question was asked if we went through a garden and graduated from it, does that mean that we went through a series of reincarnations, or that when we got to the end of graduating from the garden, that's when our minds were capable of leaving vehicles for such a task like this? And we have, of course, answered that question. That we've told you some time ago that we've said repeatedly that reincarnation is not true as we had some time ago thought, or the concept of it was not accurate at all. And only insofar as genes are passed down. And in that way, a life and characteristics and all continue to exist, like a tree and branches off of a vine. They continue to exist that way, but the concept of reincarnation we've made very clear is not true. And knowing what you now know about the genetic concept that we have shared with you, plus the fact that we've said reincarnation is a false concept, that question shouldn't have been asked. Another question was asked, what about the boxes and mind exchanges? And you should know, too, that not everything is cut and dried. It's just, or no, that's not the right answer. That we told you that this garden would one day reach a point where at the completion or at a certain time, there would be a meeting between the evolving of the humans with the beginning of the next level. At that point, that particular group of individuals that were ready to move up would not, they would have overcome disease and human characteristics and death and, in a sense, received immortality, a vehicle that then could move up. But that did not mean that the whole planet would reach that condition at one given time, or that everything but those few individuals would be destroyed, any more than the whole planet is at this given point in time of equal civilized degree. There are extreme variances of civilization on this planet right now, and some wild guess might be that at the time a few people might evolve to being ready to move up, probably the most primitive at that time that would even exist would be maybe what is now the most advanced. But there would still be those different things. Now, in the same way, what the new concept we've given you does not mean that vehicles might not still be transplanted by the next level. They still, great numbers of individuals disappear all the time. We don't know that, but the boxes concept now should have new meaning for you. You should not see that as you saw it at all. That you should automatically wipe that out if it can't fit into our update. Transference of minds wouldn't be transference of minds outside of vehicles, but transference of vehicles, like transplanting and grafting from garden to garden is a possibility that the next level might do with many who disappeared. You understand that?
Whole races could be transferred, where it wouldn't even appear in their mind to remember that they were in one place and all of a sudden they crossed into another place, like the natives of Africa or something. You've got to realize that in the process of our explaining things, we explain things to you to the best of our ability at the time that we explain it. And if you remember correctly, we even said we weren't sure if this was, anytime we come up with something, we tell you we're not sure if this is the exact truth, but it's as close to our understanding as possible. Now, it's obvious that you all didn't listen to the tape very carefully.
Or not.
Or enough. And we said, I remember very distinctly at the end of the tape, to say we want you all to listen to it 2 or 3 times, maybe a couple of times. I don't think I said 3, but anyway, many times in order for you to understand what Joe was talking about and what we were talking about. That you don't realize how sometimes you take these tapes very casually. You, out of procedure, you sit and listen to them, but do you really listen to them? Listen to them enough where they are really ingrained in your computer and you fully understand what we're talking about.
If you're going to be good crew members in the task that you're doing while you're here, your thirst for knowledge, it should be extreme. Your thirst should be extreme, not willing to accept new information, but it should be an eagerness to have more knowledge and to the next step in the piano roll. It should really be thirsty. If you craved it 10% of what we crave it, then your craving would be extremely strong, and we feel like it should be.
Now, you've got to remember your vehicle doesn't give a hoot about it, but your mind is the one that has to crave it. And eventually your vehicle will become more interested in it. Your vehicle might I don't know another tape. I don't know how long it is now, And but your mind will be saying, oh, more information, more knowledge, more growth, and I want to fully understand it. So it's not that we're trying to put you all down because you sent us a question, but it's because that question was answered that we mentioned this. We still want you to have questions, but don't make sure it hasn't been answered before you send us a question, because you're taking the easy way out. Why you're not researching? It's just like the procedure if an individual has a question about a procedure, and instead of researching the answer to the question, he sits down and writes a note to SAT3, and SAT3 people, instead of researching it, will write the link and ask us. Now, that doesn't happen hopefully very often, but what I'm getting at is the point of it all is you should try your best to be self-sufficient, meaning you should try to exert all the effort that you can to find an answer to a procedure. If you have researched it, you've gotten 2 or 3 people to help you to research it, and you can't find it, then that goes to SAT3. And then if SAT3 gets their heads together, tries to find the answer, and if they can't do it, then it comes to me. And this is how you become more self-sufficient rather than dependent on somebody.
you've got to get your brain working better at higher thought. It's just like we've said to you that your word processor doesn't have the vocabulary and the logical structure of the kind of thinking that we're doing now. And that's the reason it's hard to talk about it, because the brain stammers, because it doesn't know how to form those thoughts, because it's had no practice at it. It's had nowhere in the history of these vehicles have the genes ever experienced this kind of logic and formulating thoughts with ideas like this. It doesn't mean that those ideas are so advanced in next level terms, but they're far more advanced than these primitive vehicles have ever experienced formulating. So just as it is hard for us to formulate these thoughts to words and get ideas to you that are clear, it's hard for you to force your brain to clarify them as you listen to these tapes and to sort them out. If you hear an idea, your little old computer in your head should just be working so fast, putting all the ramifications, or updating all the ramifications of that idea. Not in such a way as to find contradictory things with the new step on the piano roll, with the other things, but just you should automatically be able to see, oh, then this means that meant such and such, which is the right way. If you've really thought it through and you digested the new concept, you would then assimilate that concept by thinking, oh, then this meant that those things now mean so and so, instead of, well, how does that conflict, or what about that old concept here? That those don't agree. For you to think in such terms as that means you haven't thought about it clearly. You haven't let the new concept, the new step on the piano roll, take form. Because if it has taken form, then you would automatically spend time, lots of time, every day, no matter what you're doing, working in the lab, anything else, seeing how this new concept affects all the other things that you know, and updates them. Do you understand that?
Okay, something more. Do you all know why we don't want you all to discuss the tapes with each other? Brenda? I'm not sure why, but I guess it's because it was a new information.
Might be wrong, but in the past, you said that if we let it out in that way, we're letting energy out of ourselves.
That's one reason, but that's not. I'm not too right, but what I could write change the information. That's right, because you discussed it, and everyone is telling their own interpretation of that tape.
And none of the interpretations can be trusted in the process of expressing them for them to be as accurate as what was delivered to you. That's the reason you listen to it, and listen to it, and listen to it, and think about it, and think about it, and think about it. But then, even then, you have to pretty much keep the questions of it to yourselves in relationship to your teachers. That's the reason questions come written to retreat, if they're questions. If you discuss these things among yourselves, we get bogged down in all kinds of distortion.
It's like Doug said, I'm adding to what he said, that if you discuss it, then you are taking someone, you can be colored by someone's opinion. It's like a movie. You know, humans like to discuss a movie, and they want to get into a psychological thing about it. And I think that, and then they give the expression of what so-and-so meant in the movie, and then before you know it, you have 6 different versions of what happened. And probably none of them are correct. And so in a sense, with you want to drop that human tendency of discussing it with somebody and try to find the answer within yourself, because goodness knows we've given you all the information that we have, and we've kept it on tape, and we'll probably have tape coming out our ears back at the crack. But they're there for a reason, for you to research things. Don't just listen to it and put it on the shelf and forget about it.
Are those tapes all dated, by the way? They are. Okay.
So use those things to your advantage, and don't rely on any classmate to give their opinion, because none of them know what they're talking about. Totally. They only think they do. We only think we know what we're talking about.
Don't forget, they're students the same as you, and they're trying desperately to work on what they heard, but they certainly wouldn't be a good one to pass on to you. Their interpretation.
And this is what confused me so when I saw all those names written on that one question, or that one or a couple of questions that were sent to us, because we couldn't figure out how could all those people come up with the same question. And the only thing that I felt like could have happened was that you all discussed it, which is a big no-no, which shows that you can't get away with anything, right?
I feel like there's still a disturbance in your brain of concepts. You're still clinging to an old concept of what self is, which is a very primitive concept. Or you wouldn't be troubled with things like reincarnation and boxes. Now, when Pete mentioned a moment ago that part of the things you can think about in relationship to boxes are into transference from planet to planet, can be whole tribes or whole groups taken and replanted for purposes because it's time to have this stage of civilization in another garden someplace because it would be appropriate for it. But you still, something seems to be missing, something seems to be less than satisfying to you to buy the life as it moves upward through genetics. It's just like a primitive human isn't happy unless he thinks, I, myself, package called self, me, is that I am going to heaven when I die, or I am going to reincarnate when this vehicle dies. And he gets some kind of primitive satisfaction about thinking about that whole package of what he calls himself moving from one condition to another. And that's a very primitive concept to you now. You should see how primitive it is. And that it's even, in other words, nothing is lost by the concept of how life extends through genetic progression. It's actually gained. Not only if two individuals cohabitate and have an offspring, not only is that individual, in a sense, reincarnating, he's not only reincarnating, he's multiplying, not as one, but two, and not only a combination of his history, but the history of the other individual. Plus, he, as he brings that individual up in his home, the offspring, he incarnates his ideas and the ideas of the society that surrounds him into that vehicle by influence. If you can understand it. Now, mixing terms to try to help you understand it. But something is still, you're still reluctant to drop the idea of the packaged self as life moves forward. And you shouldn't be. It's a primitive, almost a superstitious, it's almost a barbaric thought compared to where you should be in your thinking now of how life moves upward. I mean, even Jesus even explained this to his disciples 2,000 years ago, and they were to teach it. I mean, the concept of I am the vine and you are the branches, and this is the way that life works. You see what we're saying? And within the framework of the vocabulary they had at the time, he made an effort to explain this same concept then in order to have them begin thinking in those terms, even though their little primitive vehicles were so limited that they got so distorted that repetitious distortion ended up in what is now the interpretations of those thoughts and ideas from the Gospels and the New Testament. But you've got to be sure that you're forcing enough of your next level mind in to see how beautiful, the magnificent, the progression of life is through genetic progression, and how the next level has designed that death and disease be catalysts for growth. That one of the best things that can help you want to be better is because you want to be healthier, so that you will live longer. And therefore you try to, in scientific laboratories and in your diet and in your habits and everything, you try to improve that in order to live longer and to have a clearer mind, because you don't want to be like these other poor little senile people in the old folks home, or because their vehicles are so broken down with disease. And so it's a beautiful way that they have used the normal processes of primitive ideas and primitive habits which create disease and death, to use those very things that are created by those primitive ideas as the stimulus for doing the opposite of overcoming disease and death in order to progress upward. I know we've talked about this before, but you should think about it a lot so that you can see the beauty of how it works. Now, don't get the idea, but like we said a few minutes ago, that this happens garden-wide. It happens in no more than the space program is garden-wide right now. In other words, there are many levels of progressions upward going on at the same time. That's the way a garden grows. And even though we said a moment ago that maybe when a garden might have a few yield that are ready to graduate from the garden, we said that maybe the poorest civilization at that time would be equal to the most advanced. Now, the spectrum might even be greater than that. But there would have to be some advancement at the primitive levels of protection so that the yield wouldn't be destroyed that once we were ready to graduate. And when we call them yield, it doesn't mean that all the rest are wiped out because those have reached that point. It means that the rest are still in primitive conditions. Now, the fact that you all took some varying degrees, but not much, I started to say some varying degrees of primitive in your vehicles, but you really didn't take much. You got just about, even though they're very, very primitive to you and very primitive to us, you got just about the best that the planet at this time had to offer. That's the truth. Just about the best that the planet at this time had to offer. Because you got them in a nation that has more advancement in all of these ways than any other nation on the planet. That's the reason we're doing the task we were sent to do in this nation. And so even though you know how primitive your vehicles are, they're just about, as a rule, just about as good as the planet has to offer.
We've also need to realize that you all didn't bite off more than you could chew. In other words, the vehicles you got were exactly what you needed in order to gain the strength that you needed.
Even what you asked for.
In other words, you all picked them. And the next level, I'm sure, checked this to make sure that it wouldn't be too difficult for you. And as soon as you realize that your vehicle needs to be under control better, and you all start fighting to make it behave itself, the more quickly you will accomplish what you need to accomplish. In other words, it's a task. You have a task to get that vehicle under control and also to help on this other task of getting this uplifting this garden and everything. So you need to really buckle down and do it and make up your mind if you want to do it.
We'll let you in on a little personal secret with T&O that we understand now why we, each time somebody would leave your class, why it would disturb us. And we recognize now, because of what you know and because of what we have shared with you, that like what T just said, that you, when you came, you picked and had a check partner, an older member check partner, agree that you could handle what you picked. And when we see someone who has picked something they could handle, they had the capacity to handle, it just disturbs us terribly that they have chosen not to complete the task they have set out to complete, which was getting that vehicle under control. As an individual and as a selfish task, it was getting that vehicle under control. But as far as the next level crew task, they were also willing to let the few who continue do their work for them. In other words, it's like, you all go do that, I'll go do something else, because that's too hard. And it's just a major goof-off. Even though when they, now when it's time to go, and all of them have to return, they're going to have to go back and write their report, and it's going to be clear that they did not complete their task. And not only did they not complete their task, they let their crew down. And they kind of just ran around, ran wild, playing like the primitive vehicles were playing during the time of the task. Can you see what we're saying? And the next level can't do a thing in the world except those who passed, and there'll be various levels of even those who pass. There'll be different grades. It's like if you pass a class in school, and C is the passing grade. There's some who make C, some who make B, some who make A, right? But those all passed, and they will be given. In other words, they will have stepped up further after that. They will have progressed further. That's how you evolve in the next level, okay? How you evolve in the next level depends upon how you pass your challenges and your tasks and your tests. And so when you're slow to pass them or you flunk them, then you have to repeat them and do more remedial ones. But you're capable of doing them more quickly. Now that doesn't mean that all of you came in with, even into this task as a crew to do this, that all of your minds came in with the same degree of capacity. But it does mean that the degree of capacity that you all had was adequate to perform the task, both as a crew and as individuals to overcome your vehicles. And you'll be graded accordingly. And you'll move up in the evolution of the next level according to the capacity that you had and what you did with it.
Actually, if you can accomplish this task with this vehicle, then you will probably bring that gap. If you were lower, like if you had a lower grade, or lesser
Advanced.
A weaker nerd, let's put it that way. Then somebody else, let's take for Cody, for instance, let's say he had a weaker nerd. Then about a vehicle is that could bring him up to almost the same level with the other two, if he was able to go from that vehicle. I'm not saying, the city code back. And, now, if you were determined to get back up to a higher grade, then you would work very hard to get that vehicle under control, so that when you accomplished it, you would be up to where the others were. So in a sense, you can kind of tell what you need by how difficult your vehicle is. I guess we're all.
Well, when she said back up to where you were, she didn't mean that you were someplace and you slipped back.
No, back up to a higher level.
The beauty of any task is the more effort you exert into it and the better job you do on it, the faster you get evolve, the faster you can progress. You're not limited. Like if you all do the same task, you don't all just get a maximum of 3 points. You know, in other words, you could get 5 points, 6 points. You could get 1 point. But all of you were capable of getting the minimum or the medium. You were all capable of getting the medium, which would have been adequate for that task in general terms. But as individuals, you're all capable of growing at different rates, depending upon your application of effort at that at the given circumstance of the task. This particular task, the given circumstance, is the difficulty of the vehicle that you have to handle, which gives you a chance for accelerated development. But it might be accelerated, or that chance for accelerated development, for several reasons which you don't know. One reason might be because you're just in line for such a task to offer you a chance to move a step ahead. Another reason might be because that last couple of tasks you had, you didn't do them as well as you wanted to do or as you could have done. And so you're so thankful to have a chance to make a few extra points and move up to where you would really like to move if you can prove yourself. You see what we're saying? So all that variance is there. That's why you all need to, 24 hours a day, have such a thirst in how you accomplish the control of your vehicle, so that you never have an excuse for irritability or making waves or finding fault with each other or anything that throws a little discoloration in the task of forward motion. You don't have any excuse for it, or anything that unnecessarily would deplete your vehicle or cause you to go on a downer, or you have no excuse for it. And you've got to recognize that only the vehicle has the habit of moods and downers and depletions, anxiety, irritability. Your mind doesn't have any of those characteristics. You overcame those characteristics along the process. Your mind overcame those characteristics as your mind was going through a primitive society on a garden. But here you are, with your mind thrust back into a primitive vehicle. Don't forget that, in a sense, when you reached the little class that graduated from garden, you had at that time overcome these things. Okay? In a sense, you had become very gentle, almost very naive, because you had spent some time away from that primitive condition. And to be forced to even occupy the vibrations of an animal vehicle, it causes you to have to be aggressive and strong against the vibrations of that vehicle. Otherwise, the vehicle gets the best of it, because it's strong. Primitive is always strong. You see what we're saying? It's always strong in a physical way and in lower vibration way. You had become stronger. If you didn't have a strong mind of being a graduate of a planet, you couldn't have even entered a primitive vehicle and handle it, be able to handle it, if you hadn't had a strong mind. You couldn't have even done it. It would just have absorbed you immediately and gone on about its way. But it's the fact that you were so advanced in mind, but you had overcome a lot of the characteristics that you, in other words, you become so gentle in a sense, and so not in other words, kind of naive, innocent to the ways of a primitive vehicle like this. So that when you got in one and were surrounded by others in them, it's just like, oh, is this the way I'm supposed to act? You know, and instead of being aggressive and recognizing, uh-oh, this is this vehicle. No, this isn't my vehicle, this is this vehicle. And actually, those vehicles are not your vehicles. Don't even think they're your vehicles. You're occupying them. They belong to this planet. You see what I'm saying? Even though you have control of them. But if you think my vehicle, that's too much association with your mind with that vehicle. So it's this vehicle that in a sense is foreign to me that is causing all this conflict. And I have to be aggressive in keeping the mind strong enough to not let it get away with any of its primitive ways.
Well, the dog don't mention about your mind, and I'm going to try to give you a clue, because I think don't mention this, and that might be the note that you all were trying to write down about the mind. Doe said, what did Doe say that the mind was? Said it just the other day, or I thought it was okay.
Well, I remember correctly explaining, well, you started out like we were using
We're talking about the mind that he was talking about, graduating from another garden.
Yes, what is the mind, and when an individual is ready to graduate from the garden? What has it become at that point?
What is equal to the mind? What is the mind?
Oh yes, okay.
What is the mind?
My understanding is that all evolved civilized genetic characteristics.
Is it genes? The refined genes?
It's what the computer bank has become. It's what the genetic structure has become. It's the knowledge. It's the action. It's the thought.
Okay, is that what you all read?
It's everything but the tool itself. You see what I'm saying? In other words, the body, if you separate the mind from the body, it would be everything but the tool itself needed to carry out all that genetic structure.
In other words, the vehicle doesn't matter. It's genes. The refined genes that have read itself on all humans.
It's the whole bank of what your computer and all of its genetic structure had become at the time of completion of human kingdom. That is the mind. It's like everything but the shell. Everything but the shell. At that time that you have completed, you've reached the point of deserving to be a beginner in the next evolutionary kingdom.
Do y'all not remember I talked about this once the last time? So, if that was your question, then you really need to listen to that other tape again, because you really understand.
I was just wondering, what is the appropriate way? Like, you listen to a tape a number of times and you think you understand the updates, but what is the appropriate way?
What do you mean update?
Well, what I mean is, like, you said that you, you said you would examine all your old data in light of the new tape and make the corrections.
No, not consciously. It's not that you're examining it. It's just that it automatically, as you think about it, you can see, oh yes, that means this, means that. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
It's not really updates, it's more clarification.
Right.
Okay, what do you mean?
how do you proceed to check to make sure that you're doing that properly? You haven't heard it.
You don't. If you have a question that can't be solved, you write the question and it's answered at retreat. But you don't discuss it among yourselves.
But I mean, it's like say when I'm sitting in the computer.
There's no way.
So
You know,
The way that's corrected is the way our class grows. That's the normal procedure of how our class grows.
The human vehicle has to say, do I have this right? Can we discuss it? I'm not sure I have it right. In other words, if that fits in your mind, it seems to fit right, then you've got it right.
That's right. And we will know by your actions and your thoughts and what you're dealing with whether or not you've got it right and whether or not you've made the adjustment. It will surface. If it hasn't, we apply it again and we move on from there.
Very much, do you have me? You're really sure, Judge? Okay, the thing of it is, you've got to trust yourself more. In other words, if you listen to your tape, listen to the tape, and you go over it in your mind, because we don't expect you to just drop it after you listen to your tape. We expect you to think about it until you know you have it ingrained. It doesn't mean you repeat it over and over and over in your mind, but you think about it. Honestly think about it, just like you would the educating of Rita. After you saw that, you thought about it, I'm sure, and how it applied to this, and so on. And in a sense, you take these lessons and you think about them and see if you understand what we have been talking about. But then if you don't understand something, then, like I said, you write out another question. But you don't have to check with us to see if what you received was right. Because if it feels right in your mind, then you have it.
It'll show up.
And
Your
it'll
task
show
is
up.
to try to
It always does.
absorb it and to be thirsty for it and to calculate all of the information. And it'll show up. But the important thing is the application. That's more important than the information. It's always more important. Like when we give you, when we're so thrilled always to give you new information, but then we're so disappointed a few days or a week later if we see that the information did not stimulate more vehicular control. Because the new information should have shot you up so that you have a better rein on your primitive vehicle, and that you can work more quickly, more harmoniously, that you have a better countenance because you have this knowledge that gives you stature and grip on things much better. But you can't be like a human who learns all this advanced information and then goes right back to the same conduct that he has had ever since he was a kid. Your advanced information, each time you get a little advanced information, it changes your conduct equal to the advanced information.
It should.
Yes, it should.
Well, that's why, well, let's say, for example, you realize that you did have a hand in choosing which music you got. Say, at some point along in your class, that realization dawned on you. It just made sense. And if you were to think about writing a question, links to see if you could write it would almost sound silly to write a question, because as you thought about it, it made so much sense that why would you write a question?
Well, it's only if you didn't understand something, like we might say something that might not be clear. You know, we try to zero in on the knowledge that's coming in. Sometimes we might not explain something well enough that you can understand it, even though we try very hard to do it. But then you can ask a question. I'm not sure I understood it correctly or something, but that would probably be the only time to write a question. But the thing of it is, you can receive an answer but the answer, do you understand me? Because your minds are not graduates of this garden. You are more advanced in minds of this garden. In other words, you have already graduated. You are members of this level. And all you need to do is get your minds into that vehicle enough where you realize that who you are and you have your we're only here trying to bring you all out of an amnesia state of religion. And in the process, we're serving, we're helping you, but giving you full of peace, such to help the world save you. But you've got to realize that you can't remember, but you are beginning to remember. And as you exert the effort to understand what we're saying, then you are awakening more. You're coming out of your chrysalis. Your vehicle is your chrysalis. Your mind is coming out of it, and you are in control. And when you get more mind to your surface, where it's stronger than the brain in your vehicle, then the more awake you will become. You should be eager to become awake more. I could hardly wait until I begin to awaken. Because it's hard being part human and part member of an existence. It's painful. And I didn't like it, so I was very happy when I stopped walking one foot in the gutter and one foot on the curb. And we won't too often. We can't understand why we still hear how some person in your craft will change the vibration of the craft. So much so that you can't even get together with that individual to talk about it because you're afraid you'll make him mad. And we don't understand. We don't understand that kind of thing this way. After you all know what you know. And it's happening in both crafts, not just in one. And you all ought to be so mad at your vehicle. And I don't mean that you punish your vehicle, but that you want to awaken so much that you will just want to eat the tapes alive. Because that is the information that will awaken you more.
No.
We're not giving it because we like to sit and talk.
Our task is almost like we have a bishop that goes, we have a line that goes, with the bishop on it, goes in your head, right on through, and out the back, and pulls in, as we give you information, it's pulling mind into that vehicle. And not only should you be mad at your vehicles, you should be, in a sense, mad at your mind for being so slow to come in. Because it takes effort. It's just like labor pains. It takes a lot of effort. That's the reason we crave for you so to have such a craving for the knowledge as we are given knowledge to give you. Because if your craving is strong, that next level mind will force it into that vehicle, and then you become more awake. You probably know 90% of everything. I mean, your next level mind probably knows even more than that of everything that we will bring into these vehicles. Probably knows all of that. And yet the job is to bring it in and to awaken these vehicles. In the process, you're doing a fantastic thing for this garden. Plus, you're learning a kind of a task of how a next level tends to a garden in the way that you are being used to tend to a garden.
The way that humans interpret this, according to what I mean, like a lot of the computer scientists are trying to teach computers how to learn, and in a sense they're trying to teach a computer how to use common sense, how to teach itself things, be aware of
in a primitive
their
way.
primitive lower interpretation of what we're
even your little mystics and your all who say that they've got to get my consciousness in tune with the universe. You know, in a sense, that's a lower interpretation of when Jesus said, when they asked him about his Father, he said, "You see me, you see the Father. The Father and I we're one and the same." In other words, it's like saying, our genes are alike. He's no different than I am. But I hope he isn't, because if he is, I haven't learned my lesson. You see, it's what it's saying. And yet, so all the little things that you see on this planet is their effort to interpret the information as the next level has been close. Now, during the time that you have been here, and the same as during the time a couple thousand years ago and other times, but during the time that you've been here, the next level information has been like a very large package that has been very close. And it's what stimulated all these meditation groups and metaphysical things and everything that you can think of that were awareness things. You know what we call that? Spiritual awareness and all those the space program, all that is because the next level package of information was just down sitting in such a close proximity to the atmosphere that all these humans were picking it up and they were interpreting it in the way that they could. And the only way they could is to see all these things happen because it was so concentrated. Now, the funny thing is, it's almost like it's lifting away. And most of its characteristics, it's lifting away. And because all that is toning down and is diminishing. Do you understand what we're saying? And we like the fact that it's lifting away because we know we can catch that last door knob before it disappears. It's a good sign to us because it's more evidence that we're getting closer to the end of our phase of this task. Certain aspects of it are still close, just like right now, as we tune into an aspect related to genes. The planet is very genetic conscious right now. And so as certain aspects of it come our way, they tune into it. Banner? Yes. Well, I may be wrong when I said that it's moving away. It's changing. Let's put it that way. It's like, yeah, because that was lower. That was lower aspect. So it's changing to different characteristics, so that it's not so recognizable as or it's just not seen in the way it was seen. For a while, it was all these spiritual movements, all these awareness groups, and now that's diminished. So, but now it's still taking real hold, like you say, in habit changes and structure changes that are still important. And the more we talk about them, the more they're appropriate to notes on our piano roll, the more, because what we're receiving, they're caught up in the same ray of, and so those who are eager to progress will interpret it at the level that they're capable of interpreting it. Whether it's the Pope and his new directive of section be for pleasure.
There are two books now that were reviewed in the news, or an article was written in regards to the two books, but they were, the theme of them was you don't have to let off steam when you lose your temper. You know, you don't have to lose your temper to be healthy. In other words, that old wives' tale, so to speak, now. In other words, they feel like it's best for you not to let off.
Not to vent it.
Not to vent it in any way.
You know, this, like a few years back, it was if you have anger and you have to go to, what were these screens, primal screens, go and get it out. They said that they discovered that if you go someplace and vent that anger, that you also feel a lot freer to vent it with the people you work with, with the people you live with. That you, did that click off?
No.
Okay. Now, in this same little picture, each time you, let's say each time your vehicle in its genetic programming lets off a signal for you to do a less than right action, each time it lets off one of your characteristics that you fight with, and you don't give into it, that one is gone. That signal dissipates. It's when you give into it that it repeats its impression and goes back into the composite of the computer. Now let me say that again. Let's say if my vehicle, if the genetic structure has had thousands of repetitious programming in it of irritability from heritage in this lifetime and so forth. And each time I'm tempted with irritability, if I give into it, I stamp that irritability, and I not only don't diminish the number of programming of irritability, I increase it. Each time that impulse comes out and I do not give it, let it express itself, it is gone. I don't have to fool with it again. My count has gone down. Do you understand that? So, therefore, the more times it surfaces, and the more you don't let the slightest giving into it by imaging anything, or letting the thoughts linger, or expressing it in any way, your count in that area has diminished tremendously. And you don't have to fool with it again. It's gone. If you did not give into it. If you gave into it, you stamped it and sent it back. And it was even a fresher, stronger stamp.
That doesn't mean you only have one of those genes.
Huh?
That doesn't mean they only have one of those genes. They will have five.
Oh no, I said there are thousands.
Right.
I said there are
I
many,
just wanted
many.
to clarify that.
Yeah, but each time one surfaces, or even a group of them surface, because you don't know how many are coming up at a given time. But the point I'm trying to get across to you is that your count goes down as your control is, as your restraint does not permit you to give into it. Your count goes down.
If you have 3,000 of them in there, and then each time you do it, it goes down by one, just the same. You know, at least it's getting weaker. You know, it isn't getting stronger.
Oh, it might have been a very strong impulse. It might have been 20 impulses in one package. You see what I'm saying? It might have been a very strong impulse. You don't know. And if the strong impulse is restrained, you really got rid of a lot of that emission. Do you see what we're saying? So and if you can think about that and put it in its right place, and in that sense, you get better control of the vehicle the longer you exercise control, because it's even losing some of those counts, some of those particular characteristics. Is that clear?
We try very hard to give you every kind of way to get in control of your vehicle, but only you can actually do it. So if you are as determined as we are